Why do I hate Ubisoft? Or Ubisoft, depending on how you want to pronounce it. This is a question I am asked very often. It comes up several times a week, and I do try to answer it in the comment section, and I thought I would simply answer it with a video, and then people can just watch this to find out why it is I do not grace that company with my money. Now, it's a very hot topic at the moment with Ubisoft because, for those of you who have not been paying attention, it turns out that their new release, Watch Dogs, is... well, the graphics on that game were a bit of a disappointment. When finally the game was released, they were not quite up to the standard everyone was expecting after looking at the E3 demo. However, an enterprising modder messed around with the settings and managed to create a mod that unlocks a lot of settings that allow you to get something pretty much identical to what was seen in the E3 demo. And this has led a lot of people to ask the question, why the hell is that locked away in the PC version? There are a host of conspiracy theories, a lot of random hate, and just, well, the usual internet drama over this issue. And honestly, I have no real idea why they would do that, and I'm not even going to speculate. I will not be surprised at whatever answer ends up being the correct one, because I really do not have any faith in that company's decision-making process. But why? Why do I have such a jaded opinion of this company? Well, it's not the games, I can tell you that straight away. In fact, I would actually say I've been a bit of a fan of Ubisoft games in the past. I especially loved the Splinter Cell games, and I think the last game I bought and played was Far Cry 2, and absolutely loved it. Actually, that is not true. That is not the last Ubisoft game that I bought and played. That is the last Ubisoft game that I bought, played, and had no gripes with. You see, the problem I have with Ubisoft are their policies with regards DRM. It is as simple as that, because the last game of theirs that I actually bought was Assassin's Creed 2, and I pre-ordered that. Now, I will admit that the Assassin's Creed series has always been a bit of a mixed bag for me. I loved the concept of Assassin's Creed and still do. I mean, I love the idea of playing an assassin from the various different eras, but especially that of the Crusade era in that area. And I really liked the way they were taking stealth games in a new direction at the time. I mean, back then, stealth games were all about breaking line of sight and not getting seen. Assassin's Creed had a slightly different approach to this, and you would often hide in plain sight. You didn't break line of sight, you blended in with a crowd, or you sat on a bench and you tried to look, perfectly innocent. And that was a great new idea at the time. Now, there were other games that allowed you to use disguises and that type of thing, which you could say made you blend in, but I can't think of one before that allowed you to simply walk into the crowd and just blend into them. So I really was very excited for the game. I have to admit that it didn't quite deliver what I was hoping due to, well, somehow it missed the mark, and I think it ended up feeling far too arcade gamey to me. And nothing epitomizes the problems I have with that game more than the side quests, which always felt artificial and tagged on. They never seemed to add anything to the main quest. They didn't seem to flesh out the character much, or the story, or even the environment. You would have this main quest where you are, even in Assassin's Creed 2, you had a quest where you're out to revenge your family, and you would do lots of missions where the aim was to run from one place to another through a bunch of waypoints as fast as possible. Essentially a race, and it always felt a bit odd and a bit arcadey and a bit not part of the main story. But that's beside the point. It's because, as I said, I don't dislike them for the games, and I quite like the concept of Assassin's Creed, and it didn't quite deliver. However, Assassin's Creed 2, the problems I had with it were nothing to do with the game itself, which, once I managed to play, I did, for the most part, enjoy. I would have given it a rating of good. So not brilliant, but good. The problem is I couldn't play it when it was released, and I pre-ordered this title. I do mean quite far in advance. This wasn't something I pre-ordered 2 days beforehand. I really did want to play this, and I pre-ordered it and was looking forward to it. And I even sort of cleared my schedule a little bit. I had a weekend free planned, family going away, and I planned on playing that game. And when it finally came out, I was unable to play it because of the DRM system. For those of you who don't know, it had this appalling system where you had to log on online and be connected to their DRM servers constantly. If you lost connection to their server, you no longer could play. Which is insane for a single player game. I mean, it's simply and utterly idiotic. And they were obviously doing this to try and prevent piracy. And of course, obviously, as anybody with any computer and internet experience could have predicted, the servers went down the second they released it. Not just due to the stress on the system, but because, of course, the pirates decided, hey, this will be a lot of fun, let's mess with them. And we all knew they would. Let's face it, every single one of us who's got any experience with the internet and computers knew that's the first thing that would happen. And, of course, these servers just kept going up and down. And every time I tried to log in to play, I was unable to. And, in fact, it was about 2 weeks before I really got to play the game that I pre-ordered. Because after that initial weekend where I literally could not play, I didn't have as many days, I didn't have as much free time as I would have liked, and didn't get a chance to play it again. And it was 2 weeks later when I finally had the time to play and could connect. And it was very, very bad service then as well. I think I played something like 30% of the time I managed to connect and play. Then over the next few weeks, it was kind of like that. It was a bit of an iffy prospect as to whether I could play this game. And after a few weeks, it did clear up and I managed to play the game pretty much uninterrupted. But this is a game I paid $60 for, pre-ordered it, and couldn't play. And you can imagine how annoyed I was to find out that the people pirating the game could play. In fact, apparently, one of the reasons the server went down was that was one of the requirements for the pirates to play. So here's me with a legally paid for copy of a game, unable to play it, and the pirates can. And that is just insane. And people are going to say things like, well, blame it on the pirates. But it doesn't matter who you blame it on. It really doesn't. You could say if there weren't pirates, this wouldn't happen. But there are pirates, and we knew what they were going to do. It's kind of like if I put my money in a bank and it gets robbed, you say, well, you should blame the robbers. Fine, I'm not going to put my money in that bank anymore. There are plenty of banks who don't get robbed. Okay? There are plenty of banks who have got a decent security system. There are plenty of banks who don't put a great big sign up double daring every robber on the planet to rob their bank because it's completely and utterly unrobbable when it's actually very robbable. And that's what they did with that game. They set up a little red flag to every pirate on the planet and said, ha, we've come up with a system that you can't break. No. I mean, they may as well have gone down to their own servers and shot them. Literally. I mean, it was mind-numbingly stupid. Now, my apologies if I'm getting the absolute details of this wrong and what actually went, because it is possible that the servers went up and down for different reasons. Maybe they were flooded. Maybe, who knows. All I can tell you is I was unable to play a game that I had paid for, and have no wish to give them more money for games when I can't play their games. Now, I believe it's better now than it was back then, but from what I heard, there were some issues with Uplay, that's their new DRM, I guess, and people have complained that they were unable to connect. And the usual, you get the usual suspects coming out and going, oh, well, you should have a better internet connection. The weekend where I could not play their game, I was perfectly capable of playing Bad Company 2, apart from when their servers went down. However, I was more forgiving of Bad Company 2 because that was a multiplayer game. And you have to be logged in to play it anyway, and if there are problems with the servers, fair enough. It's kind of something you expect. You expect it, multiplayer games, especially new ones. You expect some teething troubles at the start. You do not expect that sort of problem from a single-player game, and you should not expect it, and you should not excuse it, nor should you forgive or forget it. But it goes beyond simply being annoyed with them and simply saying, how dare you, you do not deserve my money because I can't play the game. I actually believe they are doing the absolute opposite of what they should be doing to reduce piracy. I believe the best way to combat piracy is to make buying the game less of a hassle than pirating it. I hate to tell you this, but there are quite a lot of people who used to pirate games because it was literally easier to pirate the games over the internet, play them, than it was to go down to the local store and buy them. Digital downloads really did a lot to help combating that. I know a lot of people who used to download cracks for their legal copies of games because the legal copy of the game would have this thing where it required the CD in it. Back in the days when games came on CDs rather than DVDs, and it needed a CD in the CD player. And you couldn't. If you took that CD out and put another one in to do something else, and then forgot, you had to keep swapping it back. And it was irritating. So you'd crack the game, and of course, then people would think, well, if I'm downloading a crack, well, why don't I download the whole thing? Convenience. I often say, and I've got no figures to back this up, but I really do believe it in my it's a gut feeling that things like Steam did more to combat piracy than all the DRMs put together. I know I buy a lot of impulse purchases on Steam, especially on sales and things like that, and I end up with so many games. I've got so many games that I've bought on impulse that I literally don't have time to play them all anyway, which does even more to, combat piracy, because frankly, it gets to the point where it's pointless. I've got so many that I've bought. Why would I pirate the games anyway, even if I was, the type to pirate a game? Convenience. Make it so that your game is just less hassle. Now, you could argue, for some people, it's always going to be less hassle to pirate the game because they don't have enough money. And I understand that. And you're never really going to be able to fight that completely. You're never going to be able to eradicate that. And of course, it is always going to be a thing. Piracy is always going to be a thing. You're always going to have a certain section of the population that will take your game without paying anything back. And you just have to deal with that. But you shouldn't look at it and say, well, 1 million people pirated the game. That's 1 million sales we lost. 1 million people pirated the game, but that might only be 100,000 sales that you lost because the vast majority of those pirating probably wouldn't have bought the game. Some might have. But I would suggest the way to get that small portion of people to buy your game instead of pirating the game is not to make buying it a painful experience. More pain and more hassle than pirating it. Assassin's Creed 2 was such an annoying experience for me, I came very close to downloading the cracked pirated version so I could play it. The only reason I didn't, it wasn't morality, I'll tell you that now. It was, I wasn't sure whether if I did that, I'd then be able to play my save on the version that wasn't cracked. And of course, the cracked version might have had some issues. So I kind of wanted to wait and play on the non-cracked version, on the legal version, because I didn't want to have any issues with save game problems down the line, and I didn't know I could transfer them. It's as simple as that. Because once I'd bought the game, once I'd spent $60 on it, and couldn't play it, but there was a pirated version out there, I felt morally like, well, why shouldn't I? I've paid for the game, I'd like to play it. That was, and I didn't in the end, and I didn't because of my concerns, but I came close to it. And I don't pirate games. I never pirate games. I always pay for the games I play. I believe in supporting the developers. And so they have this system, this anti-piracy system that almost turned me into a pirate. Congratulations! You've taken a paying customer and come close to making him a pirate. And do you think I'm alone in that? Do you think there's not other people out there who just thought, well, sod this, that's what I'm going to do from now on? And I just think it's the backwards way of doing things. You do not combat piracy by punishing your paying customers. You are never going to eliminate piracy. All you can do is make pirating the game less appealing than buying the game. I'm going to repeat that. You need to make pirating the game less appealing than buying the game. So by all means, add things that make pirating the game less desirable. But don't do it at the expense of making the game that people pay for also less appealing. That is counterproductive. In fact, it's stupid. Do not do it. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why I do not buy Ubisoft games. Because I do not trust them to provide me the game I pay for. It is as simple as that. I do not hate them. I do not wish ill on them. I just do not feel comfortable giving them my money because I'm not convinced I'm going to get my money's worth from them. In spite of the fact that their games may be great, if you are lucky enough to not have problems, I am just not willing to take that risk with my own money. People have gifted me games, Ubisoft games, Watch Dogs, and I will play them. But honestly, I sometimes feel like I'm supporting a bad idea even then. Watch Dogs had issues with Uplay, according to some other people. I didn't have those problems, but some others did. And honestly, the sooner Ubisoft realise this is not the way to go, the better. There are plenty of other game developers out there who manage to stay in business, make a profit, without punishing their paying customers. I don't see why Ubisoft can't do the same. So there you have it. Now you know. I hope this explained it well enough, and I hope you will forgive me if I end up not playing your favourite game just because it was released by Ubisoft. It is nothing against the game per se, and hopefully one day they will return to the fold and actually I will gain a bit more trust and be willing to buy their games once more.